Today we are going to meet one of the best artists in the world, Axel Scheffler, who drew Gruffalo, the highway rat, Zog, Stickman, and tens of other amazing characters.
Hello.
Hello. It looks as if all the children are there already.
Yes. We've got 7 children.
Okay. Hello. Hello. I make books, yes. I do the illustrations of books, and that means just the pictures. I don't write stories, but I do the pictures for stories. And I think we have today a little story by Florin Bican. And it's a story, and we're going to draw a picture for this story. I think the story is based on a Romanian folk tale, very famous in Romania. And this is a little variation of that story. And I will talk a little bit about how I do my work, but I will first read the story to you. It's part of a longer story, I think. And it's called Prince Whiteamour and the Bear's Lettuce Garden. And the story is about horses. The horses can talk, and they're having a conversation. A gardening bear growing a lettuce, snorted Rowan Horse. That was no regular bear, retorted Hickory Horse. Not any more than the lettuces he grew were regular lettuces. What were they then, marveled Quercus Horse. That I don't know, shrugged Hickory Horse. They were green, all right, and looked pretty much like heads of lettuce when they stayed put. Only they didn't stay put for very long. Though they grew out of the earth, they'd kangaroo about, fluttering their leaves wildly and screeching like weasels. Then they were animal, responded Aspen Horse. Mineral, vegetable, or animal, continued Hickory Horse. My master, Prince Whiteamour, was supposed to bring a sackful of them to the hairless weirdo that had enslaved him, after getting the better of the bear guarding them, of course. Who was not a regular bear, you say, broke in Ashley Horse. He was bear-like, I give you that. At least he started like a bear. Ooh, and what did he end up like? Asked Quercus Horse. Like a crocodile. How could your master get the better of such a thing? Wondered Aspen Horse. He couldn't. That's why, on the way to the Bear's Lettuce Garden, I stopped at Fairy Friday's Isle and asked for her counsel. Her tricks never fail, and she has quite a bag full of them. I neighed the horses in appreciation. Well, Hickory Horse went on. She counseled Prince Whiteamour at length. Then he came out of her hut. He gave me a mighty scare. The lad was dressed in a bulky bearskin adorned with colored ribbons and sparkly trinkets. He was practicing bird calls on a penny whistle, and his nose was clamped shut with a clothespin. He'd gone mad, observed Quercus Horse. Nay, but there was method in this madness, Hickory Horse defended his master. As he came closer, I sensed that the accursed bearskin gave off a mighty reek of mothballs. I wished I had a clothespin to clamp my nose shut. Some super potent bear repellent, no doubt, Rowan Horse guessed. I didn't know that at the time, Hickory Horse shook his mane. But the bearskin did repel me, that's for sure. The thing must have been kept in mothballs for ages. It was reeking of them so mightily that I started sneezing the moment I sniffed it. You're allergic or what? Asked Quercus Horse. Guess so, shrugged Hickory Horse forlornly. Yet the reek seemed to work marvels at my cruising speed. I ferried Prince Whiteamour to the Bear's Lettuce Garden in next to no time. During the short ride, however, he put me wise to the plot of the plan. Soon enough, I was to see, once again, Fairy Friday's genius at work. I just can't see how helping someone go cuckoo is a stroke of genius, complained Rowan Horse. Just you wait, said Hickory Horse. The moment he saw us, the bear made for us like a hurricane, scattering letters right and left in his wake and blaring like a brass band gone bonkers. He propelled himself with his crocodile tail, and before we knew it, he was much too close for comfort. Prince Whitemoor, however, was unfazed. He hopped off the saddle and started shaking the ribbons on his bearskin like a circus dancer as he played the weirdest bird calls on his whistles. The bear seemed to be melting. His crocodile tail went all limp, and his blaring turned to a pathetic attempt to answer my master's bird calls. Then Prince Whitemoor approached him boldly. As soon as the bear caught a good whiff of the mothballs, he started moaning with delight. He inhaled deeply, and the next moment he collapsed in a heap on top of a clump of lettuces. My master threw the bearskin on top of him, hurriedly got a gunny sack out of my saddlebag and started cramming it with screeching lettuces. Then off we went with a loot, glad to leave the stinking bearskin behind. Though it took days till the stench finally went off my rider. The horses had been listening in perfect silence, nodding occasionally. The silence persisted long after Hickory's horse tail was over. No one has noticed that, in the meantime, half a horse's buried half had grown out on the earth by another handspan or two. So this is a pretty crazy story, I think. Did you understand anything? A little bit?
Yes, a bit.
It's quite hard to understand without the context. So we know it's really maybe 5 horses talking to each other. And these horses are telling each other a story. And of course, we could just illustrate the story of how the horses stand together and tell each other the story. But I think it's more interesting to do a picture of the story that the horses tell each other. There's the prince called Whitemoor. There's the horse of the prince, and there's a bear. And the special thing about the bear is that he's got a crocodile's tail. And maybe I show you a little bit about the work I did for the Gruffalo, because the first thing I have to think is when I do my work, when I do the illustrations for a story, I have to think what the characters look like. And when I did the Gruffalo book, I started by drawing. I will show you. When I get a story, I first only get the words of the story. So I don't know what the characters look like. So I had to think, what can a Gruffalo look like? So I did some sketches in my sketchbook, so you can see some very early sketches of the Gruffalo. That's really the first part of my job, is to think, what can a creature look like? Oops. Where are we? Yeah. You see, that's in my sketchbook, a very early version of the Gruffalo. Can you all see that?
Yeah.
So the publisher said, "Oh, he looks a bit too scary. Can you make him look a little bit more friendly?" Which I try to do. And then I have to think, what could be on the pictures? And then I start. There's some more sketches of the mouse. I have to think, what would the mouse look like? And I thought at some point, I'll show you that as well. Where's that? When you read a story, there's so many different ways of drawing a picture. So I think when you hear a story, every child or every person comes up with a different image and with a different picture. And as an illustrator, at some point, I have to make a decision. Can you see the mouse? I have to decide what the creatures should look like. And there could be the story of a mouse walking through the deep, dark wood. And you have to think, what could that look like? Do you see?
Will be ready before it becomes story, and he will discuss with
Hold on.
children how to best illustrate.
There's the mouse meeting a fox. So I think we have a similar thing here. If we want to do a picture, we would have to draw the prince. And the prince is in a bearskin. And the bearskin has got colored ribbons and sparkling trinkets. And he's got a little whistle and he's playing bird calls. And he has got a cloth pin on his nose because the bearskin smells so badly that he has to close his nose. And then he goes on his horse into the garden of the bear with the crocodile's tail, where the lettuces grow. And the lettuces are completely mad as well. They're jumping about and they can fly. So it's a completely fantastic story. It's nothing to do with reality, I find. We would have to draw this scene of the prince in his bearskin arriving in the garden, in the lettuce garden of the bear with the crocodile's tail. So shall I show you how I would draw it? Because I've here got a little easel. You can see my studio, my very messy studio in the back. So that's what I would do. I would think, what does Prince Whitemoor look like? So he's got a crown. He's got long hair. He's got a nose, and the nose is closed by a cloth pin. You know, that's usually used for hanging up washing, but he uses it because he's wearing the bearskin. He's wearing it, he's pinched his nose that he doesn't smell the awful smell of the bearskin. Maybe he's also got a little beard. And he's sitting in a bearskin, so that the fairy gave him. Maybe he's got like a prince, he's got a sword as well. So this is just what I would draw if I had to illustrate that story. And normally I would start by doing a pencil sketch first that I can you see that? Draw in the horse. I do his pencil lines first. He's got this bearskin. Oops, that's all a bit distorted. Oh, he's also playing a whistle, so we need to have a little whistle. So he's playing a bird song. On a little whistle. Can you see? And there are little ribbons and little trinkets on his bearskin. So it's a bit difficult for me to draw like this because I don't have the easel in front of me, my picture in front of me, but I have to do it sideways. So that's one of the horses telling the story. So you would have This rains as well. And then we have the garden of the bear. How are we going to do that? There's a fence, maybe. Maybe there's a sign saying Bear's Garden. It's the lettuce garden of the bear. It's a bit difficult. Fence, and then we can see into the garden. The garden is here. And then we have the bear. So the bear's got a crocodile's tail. That's very unusual. I don't know why. And then we have the lettuces growing here. But in the story, some of the lettuces were flying around or jumping about. It's very strange. So I do some flying lettuces. It's a very unusual story. Can check again in the text what it says. It says the lapped lettuces were, they kangaroo about, fluttering their leaves wildly and screeching like weasels. So it's a very unusual story. So the lettuces are somehow flying about. And the bear is very surprised that the knight has arrived, the prince. And the bear, I think, is more running. Where if you draw it, your version, you can show the bear running. And the garden of the bear has maybe got some trees. And you can show that the bear skin is very smelly by doing this, maybe. But bear likes the smell of the bear skin. He thinks that's great. So it's a completely crazy story. And maybe a bit of landscape in the background. So that's my very fast version of the story that the horses tell each other. But I leave it to you. If when you do your picture, I think that the bear should really be maybe like attacking the prince. He's sort of running towards the prince. And I leave you to make up the details of the background and the landscape. And you can do your own version. You can do a completely different picture from mine. But this is how I interpret the story. This is what I would do. And obviously, when I do a picture for a book, I wouldn't do it just with this pen. I would use, you can see in the background my studio, and I have lots and lots of different inks and color pencils to do my pictures with. But I can see that you've got color pencils?
Yes.
Or felt pens? You've got pens?
Yes.
And maybe you can start doing your pictures of the prince and the bear and the crazy lettuce garden. and the horse. You want to do that?
Crocodile, a bear with a crocodile tail, and a prince on his horse.
And this is my picture with the king with his sword outside and the bear here running towards it.
This is the bear with the crocodile tail and the prince with the horse.
And the bear's going, hey, what's that smell? And also the horse is going, even though there's a lot of splash.
This is the flying cabbages, and there's some trees, only 2, and then it says, be aware, bear's garden.
Is a book writer the same as an artist?
Yeah.
Well, it is an artistic thing to write stories, I think, but an artist is more doing pictures, I think, usually. And an illustrator is doing pictures for stories for books. That's what I do. So they're all artistic things that one does, creative things, but they're all artists, but a writer does stories and words and an illustrator does pictures, but they're all artistic, creative things that one can do. So they're not exactly the same, but similar. I think that's really nice results. I think you did really well. And maybe you can finish the pictures later.